No doubt.
So, yeah.
All right, guys. So I'm going to kick off tonight's call. This is a favorite of mine. We are going to record it so some other folks can catch it who weren't here tonight. I didn't want to publicize that because I really like for you guys to be here and ask questions, because it's really up to you guys to, be able to ask questions in real time, because there certainly are a lot of things that I think about when it comes to nutrition, but there's also things that will help you guys specific to your own situations. So without that, Jonathan's coming in. Sean, welcome. I knew if we waited long enough, we'd have a few more. You guys figure it out.
Yeah, we're in business.
Okay. All right. We're into the cheese section. And just let me know if for whatever reason you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but it should be slow motion cheese.
Yes.
Okay. So cheese, fantastic. Saturated fat, lots of calories. Now we're into the wine section. These are the things that really, as an endurance athlete, don't have a whole lot of utility and value in your training and recovery. So I lump these into the fun factor. So good for a bunch of laughs, but not good for a whole lot of other things. Cheese is, a very good tasty thing, but it's not really on the endurance diet if you're trying to lean out or you're trying to recover from sessions, because it just introduces a lot of saturated fat, which isn't terribly good for the diet. In moderation, all of these things work. It's just a question of how much are you going to have and how much are you going to take in. So now you're kind of cruising over towards the salad bar area. As long as these things are minimally processed, this isn't a bad place to spend some time. A lot of people like to grab their lunches here. I'm very happy to see, people, create a great salad bowl and take that with you. That's not a bad idea for lunch. Certainly it's fresh. Anything that doesn't come out of a package, I'm generally pretty happy about. Now we're into the meat section. Meat, for a lot of people, this is swings depending upon whether you're vegetarian or not, or whatever your diet you subscribe to. But again, it's lean meats that tend to be better for us as endurance athletes, from a cholesterol perspective, from a saturated fat perspective. And then, in the front of the tray here, we have olive oil. Super healthy for you guys. A lot of these foods in moderation are really good for you. But when you start to play things out, again, because you're burning carbohydrates, you don't replenish with olive oil. There's a reason why in the tour you don't see guys chugging olive oil, because it doesn't replenish glycogen and muscles. So the more that we can minimize some of the fat intake, the better that you will be as an endurance athlete. Fish, awesome, great. For dinners. During the day, it's a little tricky if you have a high volume of training to incorporate tons of fish. It doesn't sit so well on the stomach. But I really like that in the evening for a lot of athletes as part of their dinner. And I like people to manage up and breakfast to be really solid, so that the rest of the day is, a little bit lighter, and most of your calories are coming in from breakfast, lunch, and then dinner is more like a pauper. Lunch is like a prince, and breakfast is for kings. So just factor that into your day. And we do find that people who do that kind of strategy tend to have leaner body compositions, rather than trying to plow through a lot of food at night, which disrupts your sleep cycle. And if you're tracking your Garmin, you can easily see this kind of information teased right out, right to the top of the watch or onto the Garmin Connect app. And it says, hey, look, you didn't sleep so well last night. Well, why was that? Was it because you ate a lot of your calories in the evening? Was it because you had too much fluid? And certainly if you started in the earlier category of this Whole Foods walkthrough, the wine or cheese wouldn't do you much good there either. Now we're coming to one of the more glorious parts of any grocery store. There should be like a beam of light coming down here. Everything's colorful. It's, fruits and vegetables. It's really the perishables that we are super interested in. The micronutrients that are going to fuel our bodies, recovery, repair. And I think that, if we shop fresh and we do a good job of that, that's going to make us feel a lot better as endurance athletes. Is it practical all the time to have that? Not necessarily. The fact is we're all time crunched and we want to be able to maximize our days. Right now, we're kind of looking at nuts and we're looking at things that satiate. Again, very good for you, loaded with calories. So we try to top out the endurance diet periodically, you can go a little higher, but most of the time at around 30% of the daily calories should be coming from fat. We don't want to go much more than that because it tends to introduce more weight gain. Kale chips, again, great snacks. As long as they're lower in fat, higher in fiber, great in protein. Some of the chickpeas, the bear snacks like dried fruit, excellent for you. Now we're getting into the vegetable section. It's unlimited, guys. It's unlimited, not with toppings like oils and dressings and things, but it is literally unlimited for you. And you cannot do enough damage in this aisle. There's so many good things and benefits that come from plants and fruits. I will always tell you guys, eat as much as your heart is content with them. I think that, for the most part, the challenge is that, you'll feel not too motivated to eat a lot of vegetables unless you adequately satiate your body. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you finish a workout, the first thing you need to do is replenish with, carbs. Okay. So fruit is a good option. Certainly not all fruits are created equal. We want to have fruits that are very, high glycemic at the end of a workout. So maybe you're thinking to take in juices and things like that, or, maybe you're looking for things with antioxidants that for recovery, like berries and cherries and things like that. And then, all these other fruits in here are fair game. They're going to tend to be a bit more slower in their absorption, faster certainly than any of the fats. Like fats take a long time to absorb. Proteins take, 3 to 5 hours, but fats are up to 7 sometimes, especially if you're like looking at a big steak or so. So fruits tend to top out more like 2 hours as a commitment, but they really help replenish, again, glycogen and carbs, which replenishes so that you can go and do another workout. So if you pull that carb back into your muscles, suddenly you can go back out and have a whole second session of your day in a relatively quick time. If you eat a whole bunch of cashews, the challenge is you're not going to extract that energy for a long time. That's fiber and it's fat and protein, but it's really not carbs energy, which is the currency that as endurance athletes at least we want to select. In the off season, okay, there is a little bit of change to this, and the discussion changes more towards, okay, do we need as much carbs in the diet? Can we push down a little bit on the carbs and any of the sugary substances that are coming into our diet? And can we push up the protein budget? That's the king. Protein is king, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, the protein factor is that it's 4 calories per gram, and fat is 9 calories per gram. So you're literally getting double the calories for fat. And I don't want to declare war on fat because it's very good for you and you need it in your diet, but it is something that we have to just monitor and make sure we don't blow the budget out. MyFitnessPal, great way to do an audit periodically, make sure that you're on track with these things. And we're coming to some more colorful sections. It makes me smile when I see these colors because that's health right there, guys. You're looking at very healthy produce, and that'll make you have energy and feel good and hit your goals. I mean, it really is pretty simple. But we do have a lot of temptations towards other things. The more you try and control your diet in general, the more challenging things can become. So you really want to just continuously feed the energy systems that you're burning. So what I mean by that, if you're doing a high intensity workout and you're burning carbohydrates, feed your body carbohydrates. It's that intuitive. If you are burning fat, for the most part, you can indulge a little bit more on the fat and protein side. It doesn't mean that you drop carbohydrates because you're always burning carbohydrates, even at fairly low intensities. But that battery doesn't draw down as quickly at lower intensities, and you mobilize fat as a fuel source on these lower intensity sessions. So again, we're kind of still cruising through, the healthier sections here. Pineapple is a great fast carbohydrate that absorbs really nicely. Watermelons actually tends to be pretty slow in its absorption and doesn't spike blood sugar quite as much. Cherry tomatoes, even slower. Depending on how fresh some of these vegetables are and if they're in season, some of them can have a lot of sugar and actually be pretty impactful on blood sugar. But for the most part, a lot of these fruits and vegetables are fairly slow. Orange juice, an orange is a faster one for that matter. Carrots actually do have carbohydrates. They're great for you. I think if you're an Ironman athlete and you're doing tons and tons of training, even 70.3 and above, carrots may satiate you nice. They have that crunch to them, which is great. But you got to really think about also the density and the total calorie intake. A lot of these foods that we're kind of looking at right now are low in terms of total calories. I mean, they really are. So you got to get your calories from some source. Okay, well, what does that mean? Sometimes dried fruit like dates is a great option. If you finish your workout and you want some dates, I know Coach Attila does that quite a bit in some of his longer rides, for instance, as a fuel source. Those are awesome because they're low fat, high fiber. They have quite a bit of sugar in them. So you wouldn't want to take them before a workout necessarily, but they are very good in terms of total caloric intake. And when timed right, they give you a massive amount of energy and recovery to the body. So really good stuff. We're looking at a lot of greens. Again, this is the stuff that, gives you iron and makes your blood more operational, if you will, for, oxygenation. And your red blood cells really crave that stuff. And that's what's going to build oxygenated blood and make you faster as an athlete. So we don't want to neglect that at all. Now we're cruising by the things that make a lot of fruits and a lot of vegetables dressings, that is, more palatable. Sometimes some people, want to really just spray the heck out of their veggies, just limit that stuff because it's a lot of extra calories. And we don't want to blow the calorie budget out of the water. And the leaner that you want to get, which improves your VO2 max, the more important it is to start selecting those those calories, ideally saturated fats out of the diet that can bring down during your season, bring down your body fat composition. If we bring down the body fat composition, the VO2 max goes up, performance increases. So we were just looking at chocolate section there, I think. Chocolate and dark chocolate for that matter, nothing wrong with that stuff. Fantastic, but limit it. And if you need something, in the evening time after dinner, that's kind of like this blackout phase where you really don't want to eat anything. You want to go to bed kind of light because you had a nice solid breakfast to really top you up for the day. And you should be going to bed lighter because then you burn more fat overnight. But a lot of times, we have a big day and we didn't quite eat enough during the day. So we turn to things that are energy dense. And, everybody has their kind of special food they go to. Just know what that is and make sure it's something that can be available to you and is better than a poor choice, which might be something like cookies in the cupboard. The last thing you want to run into is a late night raid where you are ravenous and you're looking to plow through anything that will satiate the cookie monster. So if you're finding that your energy is out of whack, you're really ravenous and then you're really satiated, try to smooth things out with a better breakfast, a higher quality breakfast, and little things that will satiate you. Dark chocolate's fine. Again, the low sugar ones better. Dark chocolate better than milk chocolate, for instance. And there's looking in this window here, again, nothing wrong with pre-prepared fruit that's been cut up. That's totally fine. That's one step less that you have to worry about. And you know what? Everybody on the go needs something that will work for them. So nothing wrong with that. Anything out of the package here? A lot of tasty treats and things that they add all sorts of things to, whether it's sugar or fats to make these things taste really nice. But again, in a package, you're going to have things like preservatives or things that keep the shelf life, and those aren't going to be as good for you, period. So it's, nobody is devoid of things in their diet that aren't packaged. It just is as a practicality, we have to have things like energy bars and gels and things that, satiate us and keep us going. And it's not practical to think that you're going to carry around, 3 bananas, 5 dates, and a box of blueberries. But when you have the option and it presents itself to eat healthier and prepare your foods, go for it. I think of our professionals in endurance sports and what they have to do to make that happen. And they do stretch their days out largely around their meals and preparation and their recovery process. Now we're looking into juices. Here's some quick energy. Organic juices are awesome. They're definitely easier on the GI tract, so you don't want to shy away from them. And they will especially give you energy, when you need it most. So, that's something to be looking into. Tart cherry juice, really awesome for antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties. But again, if you can blend stuff up and you have a blender and you can throw a lot of fruit in there, go for it. That's a much better way for you to tackle things. Unsweetened teas, no problem there. That's a good one to go with. I think we're kind of getting into the flavored waters. That's another great category that you can easily reach for. There's no problem. Those are low sugar. They're generally sweetened with fruit juice themselves. That's a totally reasonable thing to do. Now we're cruising through water. My personal preference is for waters that actually have a little bit of sodium in them. Sparkling waters and Fiji waters that are heavy in minerals, but that's more of a taste factor than it is anything else. So, but it just depends on what you're looking for and what you want. I did a long time ago the water challenge, and that was I had to prove that I knew my waters, and I tried Fiji water out of a 5 lineup of different waters. And because my wife gave me a hard time all the time about Fiji water and how expensive it was, and I said, well, I just like the taste of it. And she said, Coke or Pepsi? And I said, no, definitely not. There's a big preference I have for Fiji water. And sure enough, I picked it out of 5 of the lineup. And since then, I've been allowed to have Fiji water. It's just a preference. So anyway, we're getting through the rest of the aisles here. Let's see, coming around here, this is kind of like our baking aisle. And we have beans and some other foods that come out of cans. Now, that's less of a sinister kind of area. I mean, certainly if you're cooking and you have like brown beans or pinto beans, awesome. Those are good for you. Cookies, cakes, treats, snacks, just limit them. Keep them, in the arsenal, but make sure we follow this 10% rule where 90% is healthy and minimally processed, and maybe 10% is the fun factor. That will really help you a lot. If you are, training a lot, bagels, things like that, and big long bike rides can benefit from some big carbs on the front end of some of these longer rides. So breads are totally copacetic. If you're in the off season, these things are less interesting. And then we're getting into butters, almond butters, nut butters in general. These are loaded with calories. They're good for you, but they're also, so many calories, like 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons could be your breakfast. So just keep in mind that those have a lot of density to them. And, jelly, jams, again, more of the condiments and things that dress up any meal should just be, scrutinized a little bit more heavily. Doesn't mean that you can't have them. Just means that you want to say, do I need 1 tablespoon? Could, a teaspoon work? What is the solution to selecting the right quantities? And again, I like to calibrate all this stuff with my FitnessPal. Now we're getting into the grains and, cereals and things like that. Granola, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's pretty easy though to blow out the budget with cereals. Cold cereals, it's kind of mindless. You can, eat bowls and bowls of this stuff, and you just got to be careful that you don't overdo it. So when it comes to cereals, they're totally fair. They're fair game, especially the high fiber ones, low sugar or high protein. All for that. Try to watch having, whole milk or things like that can just introduce more calories. But most of the cereals we're looking at here are pretty good for you. They're not going to hurt or break the budget, and they'll tend to stabilize blood sugar. But just be mindful that that's only one part of your breakfast, for instance, not the whole picture. Next, we're looking at some syrups, and that's, again, a lot of calories, extra sugar. I mean, maybe if you were going to start like an epic long day, there'd be nothing wrong with something like that, to just have that as fuel for you to burn. But unless you're going to be doing some sort of big day of long distance bike or run training, I don't think that that's something that you really want to entertain too regularly. A lot more cooking condiments in here, nothing too dramatic to speak of. Baking stuff. So if you're the baker in the family, certainly get yourself some recipes. There's a lot of meal order companies now that can send you all the ingredients you need to prepare food. So if you're interested and you're thinking that might be something that you want to try, like 30 minutes is not a big ask to prepare a really nice organic meal. We're just catching on the right corner of my eye there, the coconut water. Love it. Good stuff, great for recovery, post-workout. You don't have to have a necessary pre-workout, but during or after, totally fine. Little light carbs. There's a lot of good things that you sweat out in there. It's the natural kind of hydration. So definitely take advantage of that. Berries on the right, do them. They're good for you. Plenty of energy, fiber. Do the organic stuff so that you don't get caught with any of the I think there's they call it like the dirty dozen. There's a bunch of different ones, berries being one of them, that if they're not organic are really not that great for you. Apples is another one that you want to have that are organic, but in a pinch, certainly a regular non-organic apple will do you okay, but just be mindful that what you put in your body is it's your temple. So what you want to do is make sure that you're taking good care of it. Kefir. Okay, so kefir is a very good high protein, fairly low fat solution, like a yogurt. It's awesome. Good bugs for your belly, help you with digestion. Can't go wrong with that. I'm very happy to see people have that. Try not to take it before like a really high intensity workout, certainly zone 4 and higher, where you're revving the engine. You don't want to get caught bringing that stuff anywhere near the surface of your mouth once you've taken it down. And I do know from experience that you can have a lot of GI distress from a lot of different things we're talking about tonight. So you gotta kind of experiment with timing these things multiple hours in advance so you don't get caught in the crosshairs. Timing is everything, right? I mean, if you think about 30 minutes before a workout, and you're having something that's very dense and is going to take many hours to digest, don't think that it's going to be processed appropriately. You're not going to get the benefit of that energy during that session. So the closer you get to a workout, simple things, simple sugars, more basic, easily digestible things are going to do you a lot of good. So just keep that in mind. And panning to the right here, we have more canned items. Again, nothing wrong with anything coming out of the canned items periodically when you're cooking. Some of these things are still pretty much in their raw form for a lot of things like buckwheats and lentils. Boom, those are great things. Great things, high fiber, really dynamic foods that satiate you and give you a lot of energy to your body, period. So definitely don't miss out on those. So I think soups, let's see here. Soups, also a very good one. Certainly in the fall, I love these and for our athletes in the Northeast and in Canada and anywhere where it's chilly, it's going to be good for you. You can watch yourself a little bit on some of the tomato sauces. They can be pretty high on the calories and or sugar. So just watch what the added preservatives are in there. Pasta, don't shy away from it. We are not as endurance athletes, low carb folk. So there's nothing wrong with pasta. Atkins was not an endurance athlete. So just remember that you have to put energy in the tank if you're going to take the car for a drive. And there's nothing wrong with pasta. Do you need to have an entire bowl of pasta, a mega bowl of pasta if you're having a rest day? Probably not. So just be mindful of when you're timing your proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Macronutrients, are really important to consider. So I will stop my screen share there, and I think we are zooming through the rest of the Whole Foods experience. And I'll just say that on this aisle, there's a lot of, before I cancel it, there's a lot of frozen freezer stuff, which also is pretty good, depending upon what it is. I think we talked about a lot of those things. this is the salty snacks aisle, which has chips and kind of low value items in it, but you can certainly find a few things that might be better. Popcorn, you know, if it doesn't have too much butter on it, for instance, and chips that are not loaded with saturated fats would be okay. And generally, I chose Whole Foods because it is a pretty good thing for you guys to be looking into, for that matter. So that I threw like pretty much the entire grocery store at you guys in one long shot. Hopefully, you at least picked up one or two things somewhere along there. I do love to eat, and I do find that, you know, it makes a big impact on your day-to-day, not only in training but in life. Period. So, you know, this is the type of thing that I feel probably education-wise, even all of our kids and even adults could make major benefit and strides from. I don't remember ever, you know, when I was younger saying, hey kids, let's all go to the grocery store. So I like these walkthroughs where you can learn, you can, you know, understand what foods do for you, because nobody, you know, says to you, hey, this is what, you know, proteins, fats, carbs, and all the things that we just discussed will do. So hopefully you picked up a few good things. I'll pause there. Any questions from anybody who's been hopefully still there and not too hungry?
I've actually got one. I eat a lot of blueberries, a lot of apples. It sounds like you have a very strong opinion about organic versus non-organic. Just curious as to you expanding on that. You just kind of ran through organic is good, off the shelf is bad. Can you expand on that some?
Yeah, and I think that it breaks down to this, Chris. Like, everybody can subscribe to like different levels of nutrition, and I think when I do these types of walkthroughs, I like to paint what is a little bit more clean, crisp, ideal, and then there's reality. And reality is, you know, when you go and travel somewhere, or you're trying to find things and you're trying to just eat well, organic's not always going to be available, or it's, you know, it's, for some people, there's an expense factor to all this stuff. So, you know, how foods are grown and the pesticides or things that are introduced into them, plants, veggies, fruits, they suck up anything you put in the soil and you just consume it. So those toxins get processed, and for us as endurance athletes, get processed in a very rapid way. You know, our calories are massive compared to somebody who is very sedentary. So if your diet is subscribing to a lot of what I'll call just foods that have high processed, or, you know, are not organic, you may just open up the can of worms of, you know, a long-term problem. And some people's bodies like no problem with stuff like this at all. But if you're looking into the ideal of foods, you know, I probably have a little higher pedestal to talk about that stuff, but, you know, a lot of people do well with just anything they eat, but that doesn't mean it's right.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. And I'm one that historically in our household will reach for anything that's healthy. And, you know, usually the long arm of the law, my wife's an acupuncturist and very health-minded, will say to me, hey, that's probably not the best selection, but it's a good selection. And so, you know, it's not you can do a lot of different levels to your nutrition. And I do think that there's challenges in the off season too, to how you eat. You know, some people kind of want to have this like elastic band with a little more freedom in their off season. And I think that's fair too. You know, we don't have to always, you know, be pious in how we eat, but it is how we feel. So, yeah. And it's only one viewpoint, Chris. So don't take mine as gospel, but it's just a belief system.
Well, no, but it sounds like you've got very strong beliefs. That's why I asked.
Yeah. And I don't think that, you know, I have always had those beliefs, but the more things I come across that I kind of recognize or can be harmful to you long term, I think about those things. So, Sean, what do you think? You heard this little different spiel more on the type 1 side before. What do you think?
Yeah, one thing you had mentioned that I didn't hear on the type 1 side was like watermelon and the effect on glucose. Is that, I was always told that like melons are pretty like high glycemic index and will shoot the sugar up a little bit pretty quickly.
It's still a carb. It's still a carb. It depends. There's a lot of factors to it, right? All watermelons, when fruits are ripe, they have a lot more sugar in them, period. And melons are one that when they're in season and they're ripe, tend to carry a lot more sugar. It's a lot like a very ripe banana or a non-ripe banana. And you can imagine how fast certain carbs get available to you. When it comes to watermelon, if you're sucking on the juice and the juice has a lot more carbs in it, then it gets taken in very quickly. So watermelon in general is considered more, it's not low glycemic like a lentil is, but it is lower on the fruit scale. But you still have to recognize that it is a carb and all those carbs will get absorbed between an hour and an hour and a half. But if you look at orange juice, for instance, that can get crushed in like 30 minutes. It's going to be absorbed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really nice to hear though on the more endurance side of things.
Yeah. It's a bit different, the angles.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cliff, I wanted to bring up another dimension, and there are dozens and dozens of other ones, of course, that we just don't have the time to go into. Your walkthrough was using air quotes, conventional whole foods.
Yeah.
I found, so just in the spirit of sort of comparing notes and experiences, I found hugely discernible and detectable difference between local and anything that came into Whole Foods from the back of a van or a 18-wheeler. I found myself over the years where I can, and Milwaukee, where I was for a few days, was a great example. Local produce, I mean, you put it in your mouth and then it's not just the taste and the flavor and all that. I mean, it's a silly thing to say, but I can totally tell the nutritional value difference between two things. They both look like tomatoes, or they both look like watermelons. And one is local, traveled maybe 15 miles and came off the farm 3 days ago, as opposed to 23 days ago and 2,300 miles ago. And so we tend to use, and FitnessPal has, I guess, kind of the standardized calorie numbers and all that. But if we had the luxury of time and knowledge and equipment and facility to analyze in the lab the nutritional value of certain things that on the surface, at least to our untrained eyes, they look fairly similar because they both look like tomatoes, and one of them would have, that's why I'm so curious about the topic, maybe even 30% higher nutritional value than a seemingly identical looking object called tomato.
Yeah, you bring up an amazing point, and that is the closer to the source that you get something, the better it's going to be, not only in generally taste, but in freshness and viability, period. We get, sometimes some of our foods from the local market where Chris lives down in Redondo Beach area. And then we've been out here on the East Coast, and we went to the Wilton, Connecticut market and got some stuff for dinner the other night. And the taste, right? Like you take a tomato and it tastes completely different. Why? Because the tomatoes that you're seeing in the store were shipped when they were green, brought from somewhere else. And if you want to give one more example even further, my father used to work for RJR Nabisco, and that was back in the Del Monte area, where they used to bring pineapples out of that area in the Philippines and in Hawaii. And if you go and you get pineapple straight from the source, right when it's fresh and ready, the taste is incredible and very different. And so, we live in, a modern age, right, where we can get access to almost anything year round, but that doesn't mean that it's completely fresh or, these are things you guys all know, but I think that the more that you can pull from these resources that you have and make some short trades for like, okay, I can't have this, today, but maybe I can have this later. Maybe you get what's in season. If you follow the seasonality of your local geography, it does wonders for your nutrition and taste and value. So,
yeah, no, I so through again, just comparing who does what. I find myself these days doing my weekly shopping at the farmers market, and I try not to buy anything during the week. And I usually last, 5-6 days. But then the farmers market closes, I think, in November, maybe even earlier. And that's always kind of a depressing period for me during the winter. And of course, it's a relative term because we have Whole Foods and we have Trader Joe's and we have all these fantastic, comparatively speaking, truly fantastic options. So I'm not complaining, but yeah, local wins.
if you guys ever get a chance to check out a website called thefruitarian.com, Michael Arnstein is his name. Is a guy that when I lived in New York City and I was training, I used to train with him when I was in my 20s early on. And he and another friend, they were ultra runners and they were basically started a complete fruit diet. And eventually he picked up his whole family and moved to Hawaii and pretty much subsists off the land, does the same job out there remotely and, gets all sorts of fresh fruits and produce. And, there's certainly, a lot of things you have to give up for that. Periodically, I like to just go and, have some sort of off the menu thing that aren't as healthy as we're describing. But I think that, if you can, as you think of your season and your A priority race, it's like a funnel. And maybe outside at the outset, it's wide and all things fall into that funnel. But as you get closer and closer every month, things get a little bit tighter to the point where you're practicing a lot of the things that we're preaching here so that you have a longevity in sport. Because if you collapse down hard on it and that's the only thing you eat are fruits or the only thing you subscribe to are carbs or not carbs, you're going to find that lo and behold, the time that you spend in the sport and your success is limited. Yeah. But food makes us feel a lot of different things. And so it's important topic to be very versed in if you're thinking that every time you go to the gas station, you fill up and it's pretty much, I get 93 octane. But when you go to the grocery store, it could be all sorts of octane, 50 and 80 and 100. And to think that you have the optionality and the price sensitivity is up and down across the board to how that's going to play out. It's kind of wild that you have that range of what you can do. So, the choice is always yours and what you do with it. But we probably don't sell it hard enough here at Tristar Athletes how important that is. So I made it a call for all of you guys, at least we've recorded it to think about it much more so in the future.
Can I ask you one quick question, Cliff?
Yeah.
So something that I'm trying to work on, or as an adult, it's been hard for me to move away from having the big healthy dinner and focusing on the breakfast portion.
Yeah.
When you're not in the peak phase or focus on you're coming close onto a race, what does the ideal heavy breakfast king look like in terms of portions, would you suggest?
Sure. Yeah. Well, portion sizes will ebb and flow like an accordion. And the longer the distances, they collapse down in the off season and they expand out once again in training phases. So the total calorie in and out, the budget will largely be dependent upon what you're doing and how many hours you're training in a week and in a cycle. So keep that in mind. As far as what you're eating for breakfast, slow burning carbs in the morning are great. Steel cut oatmeal is great. When you wake up and you're a little bit depleted, and everybody is when they first wake up in the morning, a fast acting carb that's 100 calories, like fruit, could be a helpful thing. But you also want to round out your plate, and maybe it's, a dollop of good fats, and maybe there's some egg white in there, and you're making a very comprehensive meal that's going to set up the whole day. And then the dinner, what happens for a lot of people is it's the social event. It's the relaxation for the day. It's the socialization. And you have to, that's not an easy thing to get the bull by the horns, because your family's involved, and your significant others are involved in what you're eating. So you either have to have buy-in with them, or you have to understand that there's some limitations to, not everybody's on the same meal plan.
Very true.
Yeah. But dinner, you can really help yourself out. Like if you're targeting a smaller dinner, have a glass of water before, have double veggies of salad before you start your dinner, fill yourself up, and then dinner can be a little bit more modest and you won't feel like you missed much. But if you come in hot and hungry and you're like, I just got to eat whatever's in front of me, and you didn't have much breakfast, that's going to pose a big challenge. And one thing we didn't really dive too hard into, but I think it's important, overnight is the time when you want to fast, because you're not doing anything. You're just laying there and your body is respirating and breathing and burning like a furnace. Like all day long, you're stoking that energy and that fire. And so overnight, your body can utilize all your fat stores to do whatever it needs to do. You don't need to eat anything at all. And then when you wake up, a big breakfast is perfectly timed. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of this, I have been able to have a front seat on because of being type 1 diabetic. And so, for instance, I know, if I have a large meal before I go to bed, I'm going to have a lot more insulin on board throughout the night. And then that starts the next day with a lot more insulin. And insulin's a hormone that I have a direct number on my insulin pump that tells me the total amount of carbs and calories I've had for the day. So if I go, my magic number for me is 30 units. And if I go 31, 32 units, that's like trying to put, 17, 18 gallons in a 16-gallon carb tank. You're just going to gain weight. So at the end of the day, I really look at that number and it just tells me where I'm at. And if I want to lose weight, I go a little bit below that. So it's kind of a neat number to be able to track. But, obviously if you don't have type 1, wouldn't know that. But it does help you get some idea to how you want to time your nutrition. And, what I'm saying here is not revolutionary. There's a lot of people that subscribe to this same concept of the macronutrient shifting and larger breakfast. So I'm just seeing a lot of athletes for a lot of years, what they do and what works for them. Kyle, what do you generally find helps you through some of your nutrition stuff? Because you always have pretty good energy, I find.
I do. I feel like I am lucky in that my goal is to consume more. I'm not at a stage in my life where weight management is an issue. So I think the goal has always been to make sure that I have enough calories, but that you're not just kind of pouring empty calories in that are going to not convert to energy. So again, for like breakfast, I think it took me a couple of years of practice to slowly build up my breakfast intake, because it just wasn't my lifestyle. It was just kind of like eat and go. And once I made it a habit, my body reacted to that, and it just kind of, it needed a certain number of calories. So for me personally, huge fan of Greek yogurt in the morning, blueberries, chia seeds, and then for more of the carbohydrate, I'll just do like thin slice of bread, peanut butter, and honey. Gives me calories. The peanut butter is like a slow burner for me. I try not to do that later in the day, but I found that the other, it kind of gives me that like protein, carb, fat balance in the morning, good energy. And it doesn't weigh me down. And that's the tricky thing, is that I love breakfast so much now that like if I go to a diner, I can eat really heavy. And then if I have any workout within an hour, I'm struggling. So kind of to your point, Cliff, I think what I have been trying to perfect is the foods that will burn efficiently. And especially if I'm working out within an hour or two, the foods that are not going to be sitting there in my stomach, not digesting properly. And I think that that's been huge for my energy. I know you've got some athletes who talked about their dietary changes. moving away from, let's say, like animal products, which I don't think is always the solution, but I think that it's a lot more fruits and vegetables when you're doing that. It's a lot more of those products that are just easily digestible. I can't give up meat though at this stage in my life, so it's just a trick.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting on the meat versus veg argument or debate. There was, I forget what runner, he's an ultra runner. I want to say he set the record for like 100 miles, or I believe, and he was a complete carnivore. To just completely dismiss all the people who said that veggies are the only thing that you can have and have a healthy life and have a fast training regimen and career. And, I don't think that, that works for everybody, certainly, but there are a lot of different diets, and there's also a lot of lifestyle considerations amongst everyone. And we can certainly, narrow it down to what works for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of different strategies based upon what you want to accomplish. Like, not everybody's trying to lose weight. Some people are trying to gain weight. Some people are trying to gain muscle. And how you time your foods actually varies in a lot of different ways. This isn't the end of the conversation. This is just the start for this call. We'll have more in the future, about different strategies and kind of deeper dives into it. But I think at least giving you a high level view of some of the considerations that go into training is really important, because it is a topic that, again, like if you're gassing up your car all the time and that dictates the performance, why wouldn't you have some sort of really concrete understanding of what that can do for you? Otherwise, you're just limiting yourself in terms of the sessions that we're doing. And so I think it's important to take the time and invest the time into it, because it just has such an impact. So, any other questions from any of the topics we covered? Okay.
The only quick thing I just want to throw out there, and maybe this is for part 2, potentially next year, when Super Sapiens, the gadget, will become available in the United States. It's currently available in the United Kingdom, and I think it's going out to Europe as well. And that is sort of the next frontier for mere mortals to really gauge the body's needs and level of readiness to take on more energy and all that good stuff. So I think I'm sure more to come on that one, but that is an incredibly exciting next frontier, I think.
I totally agree with you. It's not made its way into mainstream endurance sports yet, but it's certainly something that's coming that a lot of people are interested in. And Sean can appreciate this one. This is, let's see if I can get it up on the screen. That's my current blood sugar right there on my Garmin. And it's 96 and arrowing down. So it's telling me like, you might want to get a little something to eat, but I'd feel okay. We get, Sean and I see Sean plowing through some carbs. He's probably trying to raise his blood sugar, but really every 5 minutes, both Sean and I have a continuous glucose monitor that's giving us this information. I also have it on my Apple Watch here. So, in case you missed it on one watch, you got it on the other. And it's pretty amazing what that information will do for you, because you never bonk. You really never bonk. And I think that you're right, Attila. We'll see a lot of athletes have what I have already on my Garmin, which Sean has too, maximizing their energy levels. I don't know if it's, cost effective yet for athletes to have it, or if they're going to want to wear something in their skin, because that's the other piece, is you have to have a little soft cannula wire in your skin with a little battery on top of it to transmit that signal of what's happening. But it is pretty wild information. And I'm curious, but I think that we may see in this fall an Apple Watch that actually gives that type of information, maybe through the skin, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we'll just have to stay tuned. But yeah, it's very interesting, all the data. And I mean, certainly like our Garmin's already today from in the last few years have accelerated in terms of what's possible, what we see like from recovery standpoint, from, you know, what our race potentials are looking like. So I think when we pull together blood sugar, we really have another piece, another tool in the toolkit. Yeah. Well, thanks guys for tuning in. It's good to see all of you guys, and certainly reach back with any questions. I'm sure I just stirred up all of your grocery bills and conversations. So don't be shy, but just let us know what you think, and you know, work on the nutrition side. It's a whole other element, but it does pay massive dividends to everything you do every day, period. All right, TriStars, well, have a great night, and we'll see you guys on our monthly call. And coaches, I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Cliff.
Thank you.
Night, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.